Hey y'all, so I have been trying to figure out what I want this week on to be, and I've realized I think what people really want more than anything is specific recommendations weekly on a specific streaming service on what to watch. So this week I want to give you what to watch on Netflix in October 2021. The first recommendation I have for you is a series titled You, which I'm sure you've heard of, but the third season is quickly approaching. You're going to want to get caught up. This is exactly what I've been watching recently. It is the story of Joe, a stalker serial killer who is actually kind of a really nice guy, but it deals with his wanting to be with this woman named Beck and wanting to do what he believes will keep her safe and what he thinks she deserves. However, being a serial killer / stalker kind of directly opposes his want to be her boyfriend and keep her safe because it's pretty creepy. But what I love about this show is that it is able to explore where we draw the line of like if you're a good person or a bad person, or what are desirable traits in men, specifically coming from women in a modern era who sometimes say things like all men are trash or there are no nice guys that are left, and sometimes both of those things can be true in the same person, and I think that's a really cool thing that this series explores. But it is not only incredibly well written, but it is incredibly clever, very fun and enjoyable to watch, and it does have those thrills that will keep you on the edge of your seat and clicking absolutely I am still watching next episode please. Next is a series that I have not personally watched, but I have heard a lot about, and I've heard specifically from my friend Sabrina Johns. So if you're not subscribed to her over on YouTube, what are you doing? Please go subscribe to her right now. But she has been talking about the series called Made, which I have read is based on a memoir from an actual woman who was a nanny / housekeeper in New York City to a really wealthy family. And the series explores not only her own personal experiences, but the exploration of class systems as well as the abuse that can sometimes go on in domestic situations. And I have heard that this Made show is more along the lines of a thriller, so I think it might be perfect for those of you who want to watch something spooky, something that will psychologically thrill you, but don't really want like a true horror or even really Halloween themed programming. This is definitely something I think you should check out. Then, obviously, if you want to truly dive in and celebrate Halloween, I recommend Scream, but not the 1990s slasher edition. I'm talking about the MTV series. Now, if you are someone who is into slasher type horror or the supernatural genre of teen television, I think you'll really enjoy this because this series explores a similar premise to the original Scream, a bunch of high schoolers who are trying to figure out who amongst them or in their community is the killer. But I think there's some really interesting elements that the show brings in with social media, and it is a little bit outdated because it is from the early 2010s, and so there are some elements that are kind of like, do I really want to watch this show about high schoolers? However, I do think it has a really nice mystery element, and I like the fact that it carries on Scream's establishment of self-aware horror characters and people who are at the center of a narrative that are sometimes so on the nose but sometimes so far from it. And I think it is able to really explore horror and slasher films more specifically as a genre in a very Halloween inspired way. Then obviously the obsession of everyone's summer, the Fear Street trilogy. Now I'll admit I've only seen the 1994, the very first film in the trilogy. However, I was seriously impressed with it, and that is coming from someone who is not a horror fan. I do think I enjoy slasher type horror movies more so than I do The Conjuring or something where there's a more of a supernatural element. What I think the Fear Street trilogy was able to do so well is each film feels incredibly its own while still being connected to this larger picture. I think the characters are really well characterized and they keep it to a very small set of people who you focus on, and the main characters are even better characterized, and so you don't feel like you have a bunch of these kind of like nameless people who don't feel unique running around from the killer and you're supposed to care about them. Instead, you have characters that I think are really fleshed out in really unique ways, set in time periods that add an element of intrigue as to why these killers can't be caught or what else might be going on. I think there's something for anyone in these movies because I don't think they're super gruesome. So, you know, there definitely be scenes where you gotta kind of shield your eyes if you're not into that sort of thing, but it's definitely got a really strong narrative there to where you're not just there to watch a horror movie. Like, there's something very interesting going on, and I think there's some really great subplots in these movies that I'm excited to watch the other two and see how they're fully fleshed out and explored. And last, do you need me to recommend Squid Game to you, or have you heard about it? I'm sure you have, and I'll be honest, I've only seen the first episode. I'm not sure if I can keep going with the show. I don't want to generalize here, but the other two South Korean films that I have seen before, both Bong Joon-ho, so obviously that's only one specific filmmaker with one specific television show, all of them explore this class conflict that I feel is really in-depth explored in Squid Game, and obviously is the premise of why these people are being forced to play these sick, twisted games. However, I feel like the pacing I have a little bit of a problem with, and so I'm not as intrigued to watch these characters slowly be picked off one by one. Now, I know I've heard wonderful things about the relationships established between the characters and the way that you truly do get invested in them and their allegiances to or against one another. And I am interested to read a synopsis or watch a really good video essay on the series. However, I just don't know if I can keep going with it. But if you have finished Squid Game, if you love it, if you're desperate for more or for content similar to it, I have some recommendations of how I've described this series, like comparable series or movies that I think if you liked Squid Game, you'll also like the basic premise of these other things. First and foremost, there's Saw, which I'm sure some people are going to be like, no, Squid Game is a lot more nuanced than Saw, or people will say no, Saw is a lot more violent. And while I will say that is definitely true, and I'm not for Saw, like I can't do that kind of thing, I do think there is an element of the games, of the larger lesson, why these games are constructed, that Saw and Squid Game do share, of having kind of like one overlord or a group of people who is enacting these games, and then obviously there's the violent element to both of them. Obviously Saw is a lot more extreme than Squid Game, so look up what you're watching before you get into it. Like, don't go blindly off of my recommendations, but when I'm describing Squid Game, I'm like, it seems kind of like Saw to me, you know? Then of course there's the Hunger Games, which I think is like a very direct comparison of people dying with leaders who are rich and powerful and forcing the poor to kind of do things for their own entertainment. Obviously, that's a pretty clear comparison there, and the class conflict or strife is also included in Hunger Games. Then there's a movie that I saw a long time ago that I honestly really enjoyed. It didn't win any crazy awards or anything, or really get much recognition, but it's called Nerve, and it's a movie based on a book that's made in the same vein as the dystopian, corrupt world that Hunger Games exists on. But in the world of Nerve, these teenagers are given dares on their phone, and as they complete more and more, they make more and more money. So again, that element of dangerous games for a huge monetary prize is also there in Nerve. And then the same sort of show is Panic, which is over on Amazon Prime, and that deals with a game that high schoolers play every single year where they do death-defying stunts to earn large sums of cash. So none of these other films are on Netflix like Squid Game is, but I figured if you are genuinely looking for something similar to Squid Game, I just wanted to include those. What are you guys currently watching on Netflix? Please let me know down below. I am definitely trying to get through You as fast as possible so that I'm ready to start season 3 and review it for you guys when it comes out. Like this video if you want to see more streaming service recommendations and get, you know, your next greatest binge watch recommended to you by me. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell if you do like reviews of both movies and television, or kind of just discussions of nerdy content and entertainment. You're gonna want to be subscribed so you never miss any of those videos. Thank you all so much for watching. Have an absolutely amazing day or night whenever you're getting to watch this, and I will see you in my very next video. Bye, y'all.